Hello everyone, and welcome to this, our first ever episode of Compliance Week TV. I'm Matt Kelly, editor of Compliance Week. Let me tell you what we are trying to accomplish here. Compliance Week TV is going to be a series of short informational videos, 5 to 7 minutes each. We're going to be talking about corporate governance and compliance and interviewing various experts in the field to help us get a better sense of what the challenges are in compliance and how your company can get a strong, effective corporate compliance function today. So our very first topic today is going to be information management, and specifically the information overload most companies have with the sea of data they create or others create about their companies, and the compliance and regulatory risks in them and how you can manage those risks. Companies generally have information about them lumped into two broad categories. We have structured data. That is the names, the phone numbers, the account numbers, everything that exists in some sort of a fixed format that's in a database that you might own and control. We have unstructured data. Those are the email messages and the Word documents and the Facebook posts and Twitter updates and everything else out there that is electronically stored information about your company, but it is not necessarily something you control or even something you might be aware of. Nonetheless, for compliance officers, you need an effective way to understand the risks in both types of information, and that is not easy to do. So joining us today to talk about how you can manage those risks is Frank Diana. Frank is Executive Vice President of Inherent Software. That is an IBM Software ValueNet partner. Frank, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Great to be here, thanks.
So now, first question, talk to us about how people can manage this information. It is a lot of data, and it is data that is changing or being updated all the time. So how can a compliance department have an effective way to monitor something so dynamic and to do so reliably?
Clearly it's a growing concern among the folks that I talk to, and one that I believe just gets worse as data just continues to explode. For example, internal use of social tools, which is growing in its usage, will just create more and more data, and that creates more and more risk and the need to manage that risk. So we talk about 4 key areas to focus on. The first is identification and collection of relevant data. So automating as much of that as possible and knowing exactly what to keep and what to discard is the first step and a critical one. The second step is organizing that data, and I use an email analogy to drive that point home. Basically, a lot of people take their email in, it goes into their inbox, retrieval is then complicated because you got to try to find it. If you were to review, categorize your email, put it into a folder, when you go to access it later, that retrieval is made simpler. And the third step is the analysis phase, and really dominated by manual review today. You have to automate as much of the analysis process as possible and really capture and use human knowledge in that process. And then lastly is the visualization phase. Large volumes of data is difficult to really digest for us humans. If you visualize that output, it's easier for us to understand what's being said in the data.
All right. Now, in an automated system that is keeping track of that, how can that system sort out what is a legitimate compliance risk that should be brought to somebody's attention versus a word that might look suspicious, like the word scam somewhere, but in fact, in its context, is harmless? How can a system sift out what is a real risk and what is something that can be allowed to pass on by?
Yeah, great question, and an exciting set of changes in the technology area that's really enabling this. Natural language processing and the ability to actually analyze text and understand the meaning of text is accelerating, and its use is being adopted more broadly. But you can't just look at data from a sentiment perspective, for example. You have to be able to use risk terminology, industry vocabularies, and the knowledge of humans to actually apply that to data and understand when data is introducing risk or when it's just data that can be discarded. So it's key that knowledge be applied through technology to get to the things you're talking about.
Okay. And then last question, talk to us a little about what I call channel proliferation. That 5 years ago, we did not even have Facebook. We did not have Twitter. Now we do. We have increasing ways for people to create new types of electronically stored information. So how can one tool stay on top of all of those rather than a compliance department be stuck with 10 tools to keep track of 10 different things? But what's the one coherent way that you can stay on top of that?
Yeah, you're hitting on a growing concern of mine as I talk to folks. Organizations have multiple departments, different pain points, and they do, in isolation, pursue different solutions. So I think it's happening exactly the way you described. To avoid it, I think you need to deploy what I call a listening platform. And the industry talks about listening platforms, but they're really in the context of social media. It needs to be broader both in terms of the channels it addresses and the depth of the analytics. So a listening platform that can take in data from all channels, apply some of these knowledge-based analytics that I mentioned before, and bring back insights across those channels is really what's necessary here.
Okay. Well, Frank, we only have 5 minutes here for these videos, so we're just about out of time, but you covered plenty of ground for us and gave us a lot to think about, so thank you very much.
Great, thanks for having me.
And again, everybody, that was Frank Diana joining us. He's the Executive Vice President of Inherent Software and IBM Software Partner. We are going to continue this conversation later on online on August 26th. We will be having a webcast with Frank where we are going to be covering these same issues of information management and the risks therein. Feel free to register for that. It is free and open to all. You can register at complianceweek.com. We will also be posting the URL to register for it at the end of this webcast. And again, that is going to be on August 26th. But that is all for this first episode of Compliance Week TV. I'm Matt Kelly, editor of Compliance Week. Thank you all for viewing, and I hope you'll join us again next time.